Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker at online booksellers today.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I was watching the news today, and one of the network big stations, World News Tonight or one of them, I don't know which one it was, and they were talking about the lottery. I don't know what state it was, but they're saying how all these hundreds of thousands of people are buying lottery tickets. And they interviewed this one guy, and he said, you know you're not going to win the lottery, but you buy a ticket anyway. And I think that's kind of the problem right now, or the problem I have with America, with politics, with what's going on right now. It's that everyone's got their own ideology. Everybody really, truly believes they're on the up and up and everything they're doing is kosher. But I feel like that's not really the case. I feel most people are just moving in patterns. They're behaving in ways or having ideas that was put in front of their face. Their family, whatever it is around them, and that's how they vote, that's how they make decisions. And I'm always on the lookout for somebody who kind of shatters that glass. And that was one of my main motives with this show today. Our guest is Shawn James. If you don't know who he is, he's got a pretty sizable presence on the internet, especially on YouTube. I've been following him now for quite a few years. I just think his delivery, his message, even the title of his videos, it's just brutal. I thought he'd be, it leaves the audience in disarray, and I thought he'd be a great guest to have on today. I know this is probably not the normal run-of-the-mill show he would be on, and I might not even be what people would picture when they think of the type of people that he might draw in his audience. But I think his message is very universal. I think more people want to hear it. Again, I know he doesn't need my help. He's built a big audience, but hopefully this will get even more people into it. I think people up here, especially in Massachusetts, need to hear this and hear what he has to say about the world. Shawn, thanks for being on today. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me on the show.
The pleasure's ours. Thank you. I'm glad we were able to get in touch with you and set this up. Shawn, before we started, we were just getting acquainted, and we were talking about school shootings and stuff like that. But I actually have a ton of questions for you about a lot of different stuff. So I'll get to all that. And I also want to tell you how I discovered your channel. But again, I think that's going to spawn a bunch of other questions. So I'm going to save that for a few minutes. Shawn, the first question I want to get at is this, just to give kind of like an introduction. I feel, and I don't know if you would agree with me, I feel like maybe my guess is that, well, from my point of view, like I said, you have a wide variety of topics that you address. But I think maybe sometimes people, if they don't completely watch all your videos, or maybe they glance at them, or they watch a few minutes of a video, I think maybe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, they might look at it and think that a lot of your videos, or most of your videos, are addressing problems that black citizens in America are facing today, or you're being critical of them and whatnot, or whatever criticisms you've had by people. I know you get a lot of that. I do too. But I feel like you've pretty much discussed and been critical of pretty much every walk of life I can imagine. I remember at the beginning, you had a lot of videos that said there's no hope for black people, but you also made videos that said there's no hope for white people. At one point, you had a video that said there was no hope for New York City, which would imply all different walks of life. Do you feel like I think you have a very universal message that a lot of people can learn from. Do you feel that way too, or do you still feel like even now you have like a target audience that maybe your videos would only cater to certain people? Because I think I think hit a lot of different topics. Like, what are your, if you could analyze your videos, would you agree with me that you're kind of spanning a lot of different ethnicities and problems and whatnot, the problems that would hit every corner of America? What's your opinion on that?
Well, my main focus when I started my channel was primarily focusing on the Black community and focusing on the issues of the Black community. And I really just wanted to focus on talking all about the issues as related to the Black community because that's where I live. But I also live in the United States of America. So sometimes I'll talk about topics that relate to all Americans. And I've done that with several videos and live streams where I talk about issues that hit a national or an international perspective. And I oftentimes, my main focus is trying to help out Black people because that was originally my mission as related to my original mission and is related to creating positive Black stories on my SJS direct imprint. One of my reasons I wanted to go out here and get on YouTube was to sell more books as related to the SJS direct imprint. But I'm out here and I found myself reaching a larger audience internationally, actually.
Right.
I mean, this was even before I came to YouTube. I was reaching people all over the world with my books. And when I talk about certain topics, it just resonates with people because I guess I'm a regular guy, and with regular guys out here, they can relate to everyone and everybody can relate to what I'm discussing in most of my videos. But my focus is trying to help out those Black men and Black women out there mostly. And other times I'll talk about other issues like men's issues and other things as related to issues like the man crisis. Those are universal things that help all men. And I've helped men all over the world with my men's issues videos and my men's issues books. So I've reached a lot of people all over the world. And I never even expected to reach that many people with just the small amount of subscribers that I have.
Right. And Shawn, I've actually found out about you like 8 or 9 years ago. I mean, I don't know when you started that channel, but I feel like there weren't that many videos. And again, in a few minutes, I'll get into how I found it. But I mean, it has grown. It's become a much bigger thing than when I first stumbled upon it by accident. The other thing I wanted to ask you was this, Shawn. This is kind of in the same vein as my first question. The other thing that I find very fascinating about you, and I don't know if you're aware of it or if you do it consciously, but we live in a world that's very Democrat or Republican. I've always been fascinated with how your politics do not follow, in my opinion, they don't follow any lane. I've seen videos where in one video you criticized Bill Clinton, George Bush, and Barack Obama, and then you scroll down and in another video you're criticizing Donald Trump. That's very unique. Like to have, is that something like, do you ever reflect on that, or do you consider yourself to be part of a party? Because I see you really kind of talking about all these different issues. Like some people might think you're conservative or you may even think that, but then you have issues where you talk about discrimination and racism. You're really kind of spreading yourself along the entire gamut, which I think is a good thing. What are your views on that? Is that something you do on purpose, or is it just natural to you?
It's just natural to me because I don't have any support of any political party, whether it be Democrat or Republican. I'm all about Black empowerment, and I'm all about trying to help Black people take power and related to building us up economically and politically. So I'm not taking any political sides as related to Democrat or Republican because neither side has really done anything for Black people as I see it. So I don't take either side because neither side has really done much for Black people. So as I see it, politically, I don't take any sides. All I'm about is trying to get tangibles for Black people and trying to get Black people to a place where we can go out here and have economic and political power and compete in the marketplace. So I'll criticize any politician, whether it be a Democrat politician or Republican politician or even Donald Trump, because all of these guys are human. They all have flaws as related to their arguments. They have flaws as related to their talking points. And I'll criticize their talking points based on the merits of their arguments and hold them accountable for whatever they present or post.
Shawn, well, I was thinking about this today, and I was looking at kind of various situations, whether it was Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or whoever, where they said things that were racially insensitive. In that, see, here's the thing with me, Shawn. People might think that I'm polling for Republicans or telling them to vote Donald Trump. I do none of those things. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I usually vote for alternative parties. But I guess my message is, and this is where like you kind of come in, I'm not telling people to not vote. I understand there's only two political parties. People are going to vote Democrat or Republican. My point is, okay, fine. I get people up here in Massachusetts. It's a left-leaning state. They don't like Republicans. Okay, fine. But then why, once they've established that they are a fan of the Democrat Party, what I don't understand is why are they willing to take the abuse from these people? In other words, I've seen clips of Joe Biden and Hillary saying things that if anyone else had said it other than them, they would say it was racist or this or that. So in other words, the message I get is it's okay for a Democrat to say something insane or say something racist. People are just going to keep going back and voting for them, almost as if I feel like the Democrat Party, especially here in Massachusetts, they feel like people owe them a vote. Like, well, we know you're not going to vote for Trump, so vote for me and then I can slap you around. What do you think it is that makes people like keep going back for that abuse and not being able to break out of that cycle?
Well, what I've seen is that most people who are out here are part of either political party has a codependent relationship with their political party. And because the politicians from either party goes out here and attaches an emotional hose to people, people vote on their feelings. And this is something I saw in the 2022 midterms. People were voting on their feelings, and their feelings were manipulated by politicians as related to the subject of abortion. And as they were running to the polls based on their feelings, they weren't really thinking about what politicians are supposed to do, because politicians basically are supposed to pay you at the end of the day. The goal of a politician is that you elect them to represent you. Their job is to go out here and make sure that you are getting your tangibles as related to earmarks and money for government programs and money for things like your roads, your highways, your libraries, and your schools. But most people, they don't really think critically about the politicians they pick, because people vote on their feelings, because they have fostered a codependent relationship where they pick people based on their feelings, not understanding that it's supposed to be a process that you are supposed to be the ones in charge of. And it's supposed to be a business transaction, because when you're doing business with politics, you're supposed to be out here. You're the one who's supposed to have the agenda. You're the one who's supposed to be the one picking the candidate. And you're the one who's supposed to be sending the candidate to bring things back for you. But sadly, people have become codependent. And codependent people, what they do is look to react to people who abuse them. And this becomes a vicious cycle, where as they're reacting to the person who abuses them, they never hold that person accountable. And that's where we are politically. Politically, we're just out here allowing people to go out here and abuse us, because we have fostered emotional relationships. And this has to do with the growing population of women voters. Women vote on their feelings, whereas men sometimes vote on their critical thinking, and they vote on what the person can do for them. Yeah, we've got two parties here in America, but those two parties no longer serve us, because they believe that they can take people for granted. And they take people for granted because all they do is see that most people, again, are caught up in their emotions regarding politics. They're caught up in the polarization, not understanding that when you're doing business, it's about what this person is supposed to deliver, and it's all about the results they deliver at the end of the day. If a person isn't delivering results on a job, that person should be fired from that job. But when you've got codependent people, they invest their feelings into that individual. And when they invest their feelings into that individual, what happens is they don't really hold that person accountable. This is something I saw in many episodes of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares and Hotel Hell, and how many of those businesses wound up falling apart. And the same thing is happening with our government. We've got a lot of people who invest their emotions into people and don't hold people accountable by saying, hey, where's your results? Where's the tangibles? Where's where things are supposed to be done? Because when you're on a job, you're measured by your performance. But when you have a codependent person in a codependent relationship, you stop measuring them by the standards of their work. And instead, you start getting your feelings involved. And that's where American politics is. A lot of Americans, especially in blue states, they invest their emotions into candidates and related to ideologies like democracy, not understanding that ironically this person is looking to take away your choice because all in a codependent relationship, all you'll do is choose to stay with the abuser. And as you choose to stay with the abuser, you don't want to venture out and take a risk on somebody who could actually help you. That's what happens when you get into a codependent relationship. And that's what happens when people get in codependent relationships with politicians.
Shawn, you brought up Margaret saying, excuse me, you brought up abortion, and the reason that actually is how I found out about you. Believe it or not, what happened was, years back, I'm a huge proponent that Margaret Sanger was not a good person, and the motives of Planned Parenthood. And as you can imagine, Shawn, I'm sure you've gotten this too, up here in Massachusetts. You say stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of people that have been very angry at me over the years. How can you say anything bad about Margaret Sanger, about Planned Parenthood? They're this wonderful organization. And what happened was I was searching YouTube one day just for videos about her, which I often do. And I accidentally stumbled upon a David Carroll video who, in that episode that I sent you, I don't know how much of it you watched it, but, I've quoted him in my videos because I love his politics. And I can get into some of his stuff in a minute. But within a day, probably a couple days, immediately in the related videos, I found your videos.
He found you through eugenics.
Yeah, eugenics. And I was looking up eugenics, all that stuff. And that's how I found you. I found you very quickly after David Carroll. Shawn, I'd like you to speak for a minute because eventually I did see where you made a video about Margaret Sanger. And for a long time, I'd been hoping someone would make one. There's a lot of people that are very resistant to the idea that she was involved in eugenics and kind of this racial cleansing thing. Could you speak to those people? Because I do have people in my audience that don't necessarily agree with me. I'd love them to hear it from somebody else. She was not a good person. I mean, as you said, I think she gave a speech to the Ku Klux Klan at one point. Like you said, she was recruiting black pastors to kind of help her with her mission. Anything you want to say about her? Like, you got the floor. Like, people who may think that I don't know what I'm talking about. Anything you want to say about her, or reflections on that video that you made about her?
Well, I did that video as a request from one of my viewers who wanted to help me promote my book, The Woman Crisis. And that was part of my series called Historical Women in Crisis, because Margaret Sanger was not a good person. No, she was a racist and a white supremacist. She was out here and she opened the door for sexual promiscuity among women. And she did this basically because she did not like the fact that she could not get her needs met by her mother in her large family. And because she had this trauma as related to not getting her emotional needs met by her mother in that large family, this is what led to her talking about how she wanted to create birth control. And her goal with birth control was all about trying to basically try to control the situation that she could not control with her family. And what she did was open the door for American women to head down the road to sexual promiscuity, because as she went out here promoting birth control, she was saying that she was doing this to prevent unwanted pregnancies. But what she was doing was basically looking to go out here and make it where women could go out here and be out here sexually promiscuous, having sex with as many men as they wanted. And that basically took America down a road where the moral position of America started to go into a decline. And it further went into decline as Margaret Sanger went out here promoting her birth control agenda. Now, her birth control agenda was something that she decided to go out here and make compromises with white supremacy, because as she was out here promoting birth control, she went out here and made speeches to the Ku Klux Klan. And she also went out here and recruited black pastors as related to a eugenics campaign to go out here and look to try to purge black people from society. So a lot of people want to say, oh, Margaret Sanger was a great lady. No, Margaret Sanger was a monster. Margaret Sanger was an extremely unethical person. And Margaret Sanger basically laid the foundation for the modern Western woman to be sexually promiscuous all across the world. She basically opened the door for all of the sexual promiscuity and lasciviousness we see today. All of that started when she started out here to open the door for birth control, taking women off the road to sex in a marriage with their husband. to going out here and believing they could have casual sexual encounters. I mean, all of this is a foundation created by Margaret Sanger, but you'll have people who want to try to celebrate this woman, but there's nothing to celebrate, especially in the Black community, when you consider that she worked with people like W.E.B. Du Bois and Black pastors towards promoting a eugenics campaign in the Black community. I mean, all of this is on record in years and all of this research. I mean, when I was doing the historical women in crisis video, I did a lot of research on Margaret Sanger, and I've done research on her before, but she basically, again, changed the whole path of women and took them off marriage and put them basically on the road to sexual promiscuity and on the road to basically becoming where we get the modern woman who we have today.
And Shawn, another thing she did was, I mean, she pulled off the ultimate act, which I almost give her credit for it. You got to be impressed with it, whether you like it or not. I mean, she pulled off the impossible act of, she turned abortion into a normal behavior. She made it as casual as tying your shoe. She pitted mother against baby in a world where previously most of the country was against abortion. So, I mean, it's unbelievable how somebody can, with the proper, I guess, I don't know, propaganda or whatever, can do something like that to now anyone who is against abortion is automatically pitted as hating women. What were you going to say, Brian?
And they defended with rape.
Right, that too. They take rape and make it for all, encompassing all abortions. That's why they all happened, which, that isn't the case. Most of them are because of convenience. Shawn, the other thing, but one last political thing I want to get into before we move on to some of the other stuff we were talking about before we started. The last thing I just wanted to kind of say on politics. So again, I was brought up David Carroll, the big thing, and I didn't even know he had passed away when I did that first episode. I feel like I was one of the last people to find out. So that was kind of weird when that happened too. But the thing I loved about him that really kind of, even me with the way I think, it kind of, shattered my brain a little. I'd never looked at it this way. The way he made a video once, and I wish I remember where it was, but he's done this several times where, people are complaining about Republicans and about this problem and that problem. And he masterfully went down the line, whichever region, I don't know if it was New Jersey or Maryland or whatever, and he went through every political office. He said, your mayor is a Democrat. Your governor is, he went through showing that every one of these people were left-leaning or a Democrat or something to that effect. So the ultimate conclusion, what he was trying to say was, this is a Democrat-run area. There's no Republican influence. You got your wish. This left-wing utopia that you wanted to create has been granted to you. So then why is there all this crime and mayhem? How do you account for that? And I thought that was just genius how he pointed that out because, up here in Massachusetts, you'll put the TV on, you'll see 10 Democrats arguing against each other, saying how the state is a mess. And I'm saying to myself, well, you've had 50 years of Democrats. Like, how have you not fixed this? And I think you kind of said that about Obama, too. Like, he had 8 years to get everything in line, and it still didn't happen.
Well, they got richer, and
yeah,
you can't have immense wealth without the other end, which
right.
is immense poverty.
Right. So, I mean, do you have any comments on that too, Shawn? Because I feel, is New York, I would imagine New York's kind of like that too.
Well, I know about that because I've lived in New York for my entire life, all 49 going on 50 years. And I saw members of the Democratic Party basically turn New York into a wasteland throughout the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And we had a full Democrat majority. We had a Democrat governor in Mario Cuomo in the 80s. We had a Democrat legislature. We had Democrat mayors like Ed Koch and Dave Dinkins. I mean, we had Democrats running New York City, and they basically ran New York into ruin. It wasn't until George Pataki and Rudy Giuliani came into office that New York started to turn around. So everybody who talks about members of the Democratic Party, they know that every time they touch things, it turns to crap. And we see this happening right now here in New York with New York right now, which has got a full Democratic governor in Kathy Hochul. We have a Democrat supermajority in the legislature and the Senate. And we have Democrat mayors running, like Eric Adams, running New York City right now. And the entire state is basically a complete mess, similar to what it was almost 50 years ago when we had a fiscal crisis that almost bankrupted the state. That's what we've got going on right now. And it's all Democrat leadership. And nobody can sadly can say that it's not the problem, but it's clearly the problem because many Democrats really they create stupid policies like bail reform and dumb policies like talking about congestion pricing, which would just drive people out of the city. They have high ideals, but they don't live in reality. So the big problem with many of the Democrats is that they just don't live in the real world. They live in what I call a rose-colored reality. And in that rose-colored reality, everything looks like our world, but everything is completely distorted. And their distorted policies basically make it where it becomes untenable for anyone to do business in places like New York because they think that people are going to pay higher prices and higher taxes to live in New York City because they think it's a big city that people want to live here. But every place that they touch, every city that they've touched, like David Carroll talked about with Baltimore, I remember the video he did talking about Baltimore and the Freddie Gray riots. He said it was a chocolate city. Again, black mayor, black city council, black police commissioner.
Right.
Yet the city looks like it's in ruins. And the same thing with other cities that are run by Democrats. I mean, look at Portland right now. Again, Portland, basically, it's a wasteland. Same thing with San Francisco. Same thing with Los Angeles. And you got to connect the dots and look at the pattern and see the quality of life has basically fallen. I mean, I lived in New York for 50 years, and I've seen the quality of life basically change under Rudy Giuliani and George Pataki. And I looked at it from when I was growing up in the 80s, where we had abandoned buildings, burnt down properties, because the Democrats raised the property taxes to insane levels and made it where landlords basically abandoned their buildings because the taxes cost more than the building was worth. And they destroyed an entire area with their crazy political policies, which are all about these social justice narratives that really don't work for anyone. I mean, they don't think about economic empowerment. All they think about is going out here and pushing an ideal, never understanding how their actions impact real people, similar to what we have in New York City with the whole migrant situation. You've got a bunch of people who are brought here and you know you cannot take care of them. It's draining all your resources. And again, it's an issue for the INS to deal with, but because they don't want to swallow their pride, what they do is keep accepting the people instead of sending the buses back. And what they're doing is doubling the homeless population. Again, blue party policies all on ideals of we're going to show the Republicans, but not looking at how you're destroying the quality of life for real residents.
Right. And Shawn, like up here in Massachusetts, like you were talking about taxes. I mean, it's almost unbelievable. Like Hollywood can't make this stuff up. The politicians here tell the people to their face. They don't even try to hide it. They're going to raise their taxes, and they get votes. Like it's I don't know. It's almost unfathomable that they get away with that.
It's the codependency. It's
right.
The codependent people who think that they have no power.
Right.
When you don't think you have power, you think you have to accept this. When in actuality, you don't have to accept it because you could pick another candidate. But the thing is, people, when they're codependent, are afraid of change. That's something I've learned with dealing with codependent people. They are just so scared of change that they would rather stay in an abusive relationship rather than go out and find somebody new to go be with. And it's time for people to, again, do what they did in '94, where people just got tired of the abuse and kicked that Democrats out of office. And it just takes people to get to that point where they say enough is enough, because the reason why you're getting abused is because you allow yourself to be abused. And you have to get the courage. And again, the people of Massachusetts and the people of New York, they've got to get the courage to say enough is enough. The quality of life here has just dropped dramatically, and we've got to do something about it. Because if these people who we're paying to do a job can't do the job, then it's time to bring somebody in who will get stuff done.
Shawn, so I want to move on now to what we were talking about before we started, because this is the thing I've been looking forward to discussing with you. I have a belief, and I think you share it as well. And before I even get into this, I'll say I think we're in the extreme minority on this belief, but I think it's true, and I think it needs to be mainstream, and I think society needs to listen to people like us, because I believe you and me are 100% correct on this. I have, when we talk about mass shootings, school shootings, the discussion goes right to mental illness. I have never bought in to the fact that this is a mental illness issue. I believe that these people, like you can't, someone goes and plans something for months and months and months. That takes intelligence. It takes strategy, patience. These people know what they're doing. I don't think they're mentally ill. I think it is a case of life didn't go their way. You know, you threw in there too, like they didn't have their father around, whatever the case is, and I'll let you add your view to it too. But they're throwing an adult tantrum. I think people in this day and age, in 2023, are capable of that. Life didn't go their way, so they took it out on everybody else. They didn't know how to deal with it. I even think some of them, Shawn, honestly, I think they see a guy do it on TV and they say, well, I can do that too. Like they almost get inspired by it. You also have, give your views on this because I'm fascinated with them. And I agree with you 100% as to how these mass shooters and school shooters are created. Go ahead and tell us some of your views on that because I love what you have to say about it.
Well, I started doing the mass shooting videos when I was working on my book, The Man Crisis, in 2017. And I had heard a lot of guys talking about how a lot of men were having issues as related to dealing with life. And that's where I started doing videos to start to talk about mass shootings because I wanted people to understand that this is not an issue as related to mental illness. Because from my years of research that I did before I even wrote The Man Crisis, I saw a pattern as related to the behavior of these individuals that really showed me that this has to do with them being of sound mind and that their plans to murder people are based in malice of forethought. Now, I say it's based in being in malice of forethought because it has to do with the way these males were raised, primarily in single mother households. Now, 97% of, I believe, of these mass shooters were raised by single mothers. And in some cases, they were raised by what I call beta male fathers. And what those parents do is go out here is spoil and coddle these boys. And as these boys are spoiled and coddled, they never learn the discipline and resolve to persevere in the face of life. Moreover, these males are never taught what I call male life skills and learn how the world works the way it's supposed to for men, because the way the world works for men is completely different than it is for women, because a man is supposed to be able to go out here and get his own, whereas a woman is looking for a man to go out here and do things for her. And with these mass shooters, who I call beta males, what they want is for people to do everything for them. They have a sense of entitlement, believing that the world is supposed to give them everything. And because they believe the world is supposed to give them everything, when they start to get older and enter adolescence, they're expecting the world to cater to them the way mommy and beta male dad do and giving them what they want. But that's not the way it works in life when it comes to people, because when it comes to people, you have to go out here and work on things like your interpersonal skills. You have to work on things like you're building up your self-confidence. And most importantly, you have to build a thick skin because you're going to deal with people who don't like you, people who will reject you, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with life in that world. But sadly, these guys, they're not prepared for that because of the coddling they get from their parents and because they're given everything that they want. When they go out into the world and run into a little resistance, what these people do is they start to get frustrated and angry because they don't know how to navigate through their emotions, and that, yeah, you feel, but you don't act on it. They don't know how to go out here and think critically or problem solve because all they know how to do is feel and act on their emotions impulsively. And that's where you get the mass shooting. The mass shooting is something that is done out of all of the feelings of anger these guys have. And because they have all of these feelings of anger, they start looking to plan to hurt people instead of looking to find another solution to their problems. Now, again, this has to do again with the way that they're raised, because when a boy is raised by a man and taught male life skills, he learns how to suck things up. He learns how to persevere. He learns how to take L's, and he learns how to go out here and go and try something else. But these people, because they are obsessed with getting what they want, and because they can't get exactly what they want, the way they want it or how they want it, what they do is want to destroy the world around them. by participating in one of these mass shootings, because for them, going out in infamy is more important than going out here and learning life lessons. This is why they plan these mass shootings, because again, these are spoiled boys who don't know how to work in the world like a man. They don't know how to function like a man. They don't know how to navigate life as a man. So they are so frustrated because they don't know how to work as a man. They want to destroy the world around them and shoot as many people to get attention for themselves, to make a statement to say that they are here. And again, there's no mental illness as related to this. This, in some cases, is a tantrum in a lot of cases. And in other cases, it's just this person has just been raised so dysfunctional that their perception of reality is it's got to be what I want. But the world don't work like that for men. And that's something boys used to learn from their fathers. When a boy had a dad in his life and he had other men in the community, he learned how to just suck things up, persevere, and go out here and take L's. This is what I wrote about in one of my books that had just came out this year, John Haynes, 1987. Boys used to learn how to lose, and we learned that losing's a part of life. But with these males, they don't know how to do this. And because they don't know how to lose, they want to make everybody lose by going out here and participating in a mass shooting.
Shawn, you made a video that probably one of my favorite videos that you've ever done, and it's because we're up here in New England. It was the one about Aaron Hernandez, the Patriot who, obviously he ended up committing suicide in jail. He was accused of murder. I want to fill you in on something because I don't know if people outside of this area understand this. One of the things that I want people to know about Aaron in that situation, we have regularly had athletes up here that have gotten into trouble, that have been involved in crime. And I feel like if they were a good athlete, they were given a pass. The difference with Aaron was he kind of crossed that line and killed somebody. I want people to know that in general, had he not crossed that line, I mean, there's a lot of kind of people with, seedy backgrounds or whatever. And a lot of people around here are okay with it. They applaud it. One of the things I can't stand is New England Patriots have a habit of going to strip clubs, which I can't stand strip clubs. I just think they bring down the moral compass of an area. And especially when these guys aren't from here, I would hope that they would have a little more respect for the community. But, my point being is that, I knew a lot of girls who thought, they had a crush on Aaron. They thought he was good looking. They were head over heels. But then they found out he was gay, and then suddenly they didn't like him anymore. I love that video you made, and it was, you chronicled the downfall of this person who had this great talent. But I think there's another side to this story where we as a society, and this, I feel like we applaud bad behavior. I think that people like Aaron Hernandez sometimes is looked at as a hero. Do you see that, or the appeal for a kid to join a gang? It's like you say, it's social collateral. A lot of the stuff that we look down on, there's a lot of areas of the country where it's looked at as a high spot in society. Would you agree with that? That's how people kind of get into this lifestyle?
Well, in some cases it is. And with Aaron Hernandez, he was one of these guys. He wanted to be the gangster. He wanted to be the bad boy. And the sad part is he didn't need any of that because he was in the NFL. He had an NFL contract, but he was out here. He was one of these guys who was watching these movies like The Godfather and missing the message of the movie, which was supposed to be about this is not a life you want to live. Because anybody who watched The Godfather with the Corleone family, we look at it and we don't see the tragedy of it. And that's what happened with Aaron Hernandez. He got so caught up in it. He thought, oh, this is a life I want to live, not understanding that in the real world, we have consequences. It goes back to what I talk about in The Man Crisis about how beta males live in rose-colored realities and they don't live in our real world. And they don't really understand that there are real world consequences to being in things like gangs. Now, Aaron Hernandez, again, he thought, oh, I'm going to go out here. I've got my NFL contract. I've got this money. Now I'm going to start acting like the Corleone family, or I'm going to start acting like Tony Montana, not understanding that you don't need to do this at all because you're an established NFL star. You're doing well. But because this guy, again, never got any sort of guidance from a father or any other man as related to business, to know how to move as a business person. What happened with Aaron Hernandez is he got caught up in all of the things that he saw as related to most of the movies that he watched as a kid and tried to copy that stuff in real life. And it sadly led to him winding up killing a man, plotting a murder, and then winding up in prison for the rest of his life, and then eventually winding up taking his life because he could not take life in prison. And that's all because Aaron Hernandez just didn't know how the world worked. And that's the sad part with a lot of these NFL, NBA, and players out here. They really, a lot of these guys don't have any good guidance as related to how to move as a man. They don't know how to navigate life as a man. They don't understand that if you've got money like this, you don't really need to be going out here and trying to be so-called real as related to the streets. No, your job is to just go out here and take care of your family and take care of your wealth and go out here and be out here and just do what you need to do, not go out here trying to flex and trying to be a gangster. But this is what happens when a boy imbibes a lot of media that gives him hyper masculine ideas about manhood. And as he gets those hyper masculine ideals about manhood, he goes out here and destroys his life because there's no real man there to show him what actual manhood is. And because there's no man to show him what actual manhood is, you go out here and we get a guy, sadly, like Aaron Hernandez, who goes out here and messes his life up.
Shawn, I've noticed you have an ability to and it's got to be one of the first things people notice with your videos. Again, kind of on this theme, criminal life, drug dealing, joining gangs. It is appealing to a lot, like you said, to kids who maybe don't have a father or it's all around them in the neighborhood. Your videos, the way you express your ideas, it is brutal. I mean, I've seen times where you've said this criminal activity, joining a gang, for example, it's feminine behavior. Your words almost leaves these people looking like they have clown makeup on. That to me is a very, very effective tool. I'm not one, I'm not really someone who likes to go around insulting people, but I feel like the desperate times we're in right now, it seems like it's kind of an effective tool. Do you feel like, because you do a really good job at taking these people down a few notches in society, if I was involved in this behavior and I came across one of your videos, I would just feel stupid for even touching that stuff. You do a good job at it. Do you think that, have you seen any maybe evidence that this has had, or maybe even other people like you that speak the way you do? Do you think you're having any effect? Do you think maybe someone who's involved in that lifestyle watches one of your videos and they feel stupid for even getting involved in that? What do you think of that? Do you think it helps at all, or is it falling on deaf ears?
Well, I'm hoping that it resonates with people because I've seen the whole gang narrative destroy so many lives when I was growing up in the South Bronx. I mean, I've seen so many people get caught up in the drug game and the gang propaganda. And sadly, a lot of those people, they don't know where these messages come from. A lot of these people think that these messages come from the streets, when in actuality, they come from places like the government and big business. Because again, it's all about trying to keep Black people down and in a second class status. And the best way to do that is to eliminate all of the competition by making the competition its own worst enemy. And with a gang, what they can do is go out here and get you to continue fighting the very people and keeping them oppressed so that they can go out here and exploit them. Because what happens with the gang mindset is it's all about teaching people that they need to go out here and be a part of a group of urban terrorists in order to so-called protect the community. But the great irony is that these urban terrorists are just doing the work of corporate America, because what corporate America wants to do is, again, keep Black communities oppressed, keep Black people poor. And what they do is use the gangs to go out here and do that dirty work for them, because this was the work that the Ku Klux Klan used to do in the Deep South. They used to terrorize Black people. But what they do now is they go out here and use gang propaganda to go out here and get Black people to terrorize themselves. And as they're terrorizing themselves, what they're doing is taking the lives of our best and brightest. They're going out here preventing us from being able to move ahead as a community. They are destroying families. I mean, this is all about changing the frame of thinking as related to black people, as related to gang culture, because gang culture is not black culture. But corporate America wants people to believe gang culture is black culture. That's what they did back in '89 with that whole NWA Straight Outta Compton record. They wanted to hijack our music, rap music, and take it and turn it into gangster rap to get people focused on being in gangs instead of going to college, which was the path Bill Cosby had black people on. And black people, as they were watching a different world, were focusing on college. But what we saw after NWA came along was this gang and thug culture, which was sanctioned by corporate America. And it was sanctioned by corporate America to go out here and, again, eliminate black competition as related to jobs, as related to building businesses. And again, these urban terrorists basically are just, again, doing the dirty work of many of big business, doing the dirty work in eliminating competition. And again, a lot of these males don't know this because there's no father and no man to sit down and teach them how all of this gang and thug culture is all made up by corporate bosses. I learned this way back in the 90s when they were starting to push this stuff. A lot of this stuff is not real as related to the streets as they so-called call it. No, it's made up by corporate bosses who want to see their stereotypes presented in media in real life. And an example of that was shown to me in the movie Hollywood Shuffle, where they show the white guy teaching the black guy how to do jive. And as I saw that movie about over 30 years ago, it showed me how corporate America really wants to go out here and eliminate black competition as related to the economy. And again, if they've got us fighting each other, they can sell us the guns and the butter. And as they're selling us the guns and the butter, what we're doing is the ones going out here and fighting in a war where we basically eliminate ourselves by attrition.
Shawn, I've seen other videos like kind of in your genre, like say similar things that you do that I would throw in the mix too. That this, when you involve yourself in that type of activity, you're doing what the white liberals expect you to do, and they kind of use that against you as well. Could you elaborate on that? I mean, would you agree that they're also in the mix with these corporations as far as pulling the strings of the youth and creating this atmosphere which you're talking about?
Well, the white leftists, they are in cahoots with the corporations as related to creating the gangs. Again, the gangs, as I see it, they're a social construct created by the white leftists, and they are created to go out here and program an idea in black people's minds about being in this group for so-called protection. But again, who are you protecting if you're out here terrorizing people? That's the critical question people have to ask about these gangs that many people don't ask because people get emotional about the violence. Because people get emotional about the violence, they never really think critically about why are these individuals tearing up their own community. Yet these same individuals will not go near one of the Arab grocery stores, one of the Indian fast food restaurants, one of the white supermarket chains, one of the Korean hair and nail salons. They won't touch those individuals who run those businesses and control all of the economy in their community. And what's really mind-boggling to me is these same individuals who say that they're running the block will allow outsiders to run all the businesses and take 97% of the money out of those areas and go out here and live a middle class lifestyle. Yet these guys are running the block. I'd have to say these are the worst stewards if you're saying that you're protecting the community, because how are you protecting the community when you allow foreigners to come in and open businesses, but you'll go out here and attack the residents in the neighborhood, and you'll go out here and look to try to influence the people in the neighborhood, not on a road to academic excellence, but on the road to either becoming members of this gang or becoming single mothers. I mean, the whole thing is that this whole group is one that is designed to oppress people, and it's designed to oppress people because it's socially engineered to get people to oppress themselves, all in the name of getting social currency, not understanding that the white corporate bosses and the white leftists want it this way, because this is how they get their money for their government earmarks. This is how they get their money for their government programs. If there are some poor, downtrodden black people, they can go out here and get money for themselves off the top. But you can't explain this to people because they're emotional and codependent. And because they're emotional and codependent, they don't really go out here and want to understand that they're being oppressed. And they don't understand that the gang is not about protecting you. It's all about doing the dirty work of the white leftists and the corporate bosses who go out here and profit at the expense of people who don't have any men to go out here and protect them in their community.
Shawn, I'd also add that I don't know how you're running anything if you're in a jail cell, you know, having everything monitored that you do, having your
Yeah.
offices checked for drugs. I mean, it's you can't feel very empowered when you're in that.
That's free labor in there,
Right,
And
when-
that's we got the highest population in the world, and of inmates, and it's all privately owned.
Right,
It's
right.
all just like you make these guys work.
Right. It's you're
And-
not controlling anything. And like Shawn, I've said, any time I've had a friend that was dealing drugs or in a gang or any type of like that behavior, I've said a lot of these people, there's a tendency, they think they're like railing against the system. They're angry at everybody. They're angry at the man. They're angry at the police. And I say, if that's true, why are you creating a situation where you're inviting all that into your life? You're inviting the police into your neighborhood you're attracting that stuff which you hate so much.
Because
You know what I mean?
it's baller, because it makes a lot of-
Exactly,
a
but I
lot
don't
of
think
dough.
they look at that side of it.
And it's the lubricant of the drug cartel
Right.
money too.
Right. Shawn, I want to talk too. You have, and I'll be honest, I'm sort of ignorant about this. You're an author, and you have an extensive catalog of books. Which again, I'm a fan of your politics and your social commentary, but I am aware I see the advertisements. Tell us about your books, because I want people to know about it. Like, say whatever you want. Like, what type of stuff do you write? Where they can get it, where they can find this material. I'd like to hear a little bit about that. Let our audience know about it.
All right. Well, I have been writing ever since I was 9 years old. And back then, I wanted to go out here and create comic books because my brother had a big comic book collection. And because I couldn't draw, I started using words for pictures. And that started me on the road to becoming a writer. Now, I have been writing for over 25 years, and my mission ever since about I was 17 years old was to create positive stories about the Black experience, because I started to see everything changing when the NWA showed up. And when I saw the NWA showed up, that's when I started to dedicate myself to creating positive stories, because I saw the start of the trend of the whole hood movie start to come along. So I wanted to go out here and continue building on the legacy of men like Bill Cosby and creating positive stories to show people a brighter picture of Black life and a richer picture of the Black experience. And over the last 15 years, I have gone out here and written over 80 books in fiction and fantasy, and also written women's fiction and romances and all sorts of books. And I have, again, over 80 books on Amazon.com right now, ranging from YA books like the Spinsterella trilogy, which was Spellbound, the legendary Mad Matilda, and Spinsterella, to the Isis and Esteem series, to the John Haynes series, and other books that I did, like a Black sorority book I called The Thetas. And I also did some screenplay books, all about Marilyn and all about Nikki. And I also do a lot of nonfiction to help men. I do books like the Stop Simping series, which has transformed the lives of men around the world. And I've also done books like The Man Crisis to also help men understand why they are having a hard time in life right now. And last year I did a book called The Woman Crisis, which was meant to help men and women understand why the modern woman is so dysfunctional right now. So I have over 80 books on Amazon.com right now. Again, lots of positive Black fiction, and also have a lot of books that are great nonfiction. And they're on Amazon.com. They're also on Barnes & Noble, Google Play, Smashwords, the iBookstore, Walmart, and Target. And you can get my books at all these online booksellers. And there's a lot of great titles. And again, people all over the world have read many of my books. I mean, I got letters from people from Italy. I got people in Sweden picking up my books. I got people in Africa
Nice.
reading my books. I mean, it's just, I have reached people all over the world in the last 15 years. And last year, I launched my first comic book, John Haynes at Death's Door. That's available on Lulu right now. So I've got a lot of great stuff out there online on Amazon and other online booksellers. And I've got my first comic on Lulu right now. And I'm hoping to get another comic out sooner rather than later. I've got all the books of the SJS Direct 2024 catalog ready, but you can get all the books that are currently out right now on Amazon.com.
Shawn, I mean, that's just to do one book. That's a lot of work. Like, especially a comic book. Like just putting together the layout and all that stuff. I mean, that's got to be a daunting task. Do you have a, where do you do it? Do you do it on a computer, or how do you like fix and piece it all together? What's the process in that? Because I don't know how that would even work.
Well, when I'm working on comics, I just write the script, but I have
Yeah.
to imagine everything in my head.
Right.
I mean, for the last couple of years, all I do was work on my 2012 MacBook Pro, and I just write everything out. And I try to write it in a way that I believe that the artist I work with can understand what I'm putting together. I mean, I work with artists on comics,
Yeah.
and again, they have no problem translating what I present in a script. I mean,
Right.
I've worked with two artists, Bill Walko and Antonio Balduri, on comics. Bill also does my covers for all of my ISIS and Esteem series books, and it's just about making sure that your story is clear and easy to read, because it's just like writing a screenplay. It's just that you have to make sure that the people can create pictures in their minds, and that's all based on how you write your story. And again, I learned different techniques of writing over the years. I started out with learning how to write novels. That's something I learned in the 90s. Then in the 2000s, I learned how to do screenplays. And in the 2010s, I learned how to write comics. I mean, all of this is stuff that I learned by just sitting there, reading different websites, reading different blogs, trial and error as related to technique. And it seems daunting, but once you start to keep persevering and pushing, you'll be able to master the craft of it. I mean, I work every day. I basically am writing every day.
Nice.
When I'm out here, I mean, I'm either writing on a script or I'm revising a script. I mean, because with books, you're only as good as the last one that you write. And with me right now, I haven't been working for a while as related to a full-time job. So I have to keep publishing books, because if I don't get the sales, I'm not able to pay my bills.
Right.
So I'm always keeping projects out there regularly. I mean, right now I got the 2024 SJS Direct books out here, but writing is something that I've done ever since I was 9 years old, but I just keep doing it every day. And the more I learn about different techniques, I just keep learning more and more. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm working on another comic script as we speak. So I'm always learning. I'm always practicing. I'm always out here. And again, it seems daunting in the beginning, but once you get into the story and find the groove of that story, you can really get into it. The same thing with a nonfiction book. Once you start laying out your thesis, you will then be able to present all your arguments and then be able to get your book all together, like I did with Stop Simping and The Man Crisis. And on a fiction book, once you answer the three questions: who is the main character, what do they want, and why should we care? You should be writing a fiction book starts to get easy, but the whole thing is it's not going to get easy unless you start practicing. I mean, I did a lot of books over the years that were terrible before I started getting good in my 30s. Again, it's a long process, but you have to hang in there. And that's something I learned over the years, to just build that discipline and resolve to keep persevering and keep pushing to get better at my craft.
Can you tell me about Stop Simping?
Well, Stop Simping is a book that I wrote for men, because I saw a lot of men out here in the dating scene and the social marketplace, and they were making a lot of mistakes. Now, I heard a lot of YouTubers talking about simps, but as I started to listen to them, I started to see that they were talking about stuff I experienced growing up. And when I did the Stop Simp, I wanted to put it in a book form so everybody could have something to read, so they could learn about what mistakes not to make when they're in dating and relationships. Because the simp, he's a guy, he learns how to submit to women, and he learns how to go out here and pander to women, thinking this is going to get him favor. But what I want men to do is break out of that paradigm, because all you do when you get in that paradigm is attract female predators. And what the female predators do is go out here and look to use you, and then go out here and look to get what they want out of you and dump you. So what I wanted to do is break men out of that paradigm and get them on a road where they could learn how to have healthy relationships with women, and learn how to look for what patterns as related to their behavior, to show them where to avoid, what type of women to avoid.
That's all your influencers, your YouTubers. It's like,
Right.
and I just heard about like what Andrew Tate actually did.
Yeah.
Like, and he made so much money just for being that boss and
Right.
having the girls like,
Right.
you know, scam
Right.
men out
Right.
of all this money.
Yeah. Yeah. People are going to be on the lookout for that. Yeah. Shawn, I really appreciate your time. I only have a couple more questions, and again, this is great that you did this. I know it's kind of late. I just have a couple more questions that I want to wrap this up with. You're jogging my memory right now. I wasn't going to ask about this, but now I have to. You know, another video you did that I loved, and I didn't even quite. I don't know. It just seemed. I loved it. It seemed funny to me, and I didn't even completely understand what your point was, but I just liked it. Do you remember the video you did when you were talking about when you were in school and those boys came up to you and asked you if you had a girlfriend, and you were kind of like, "What are you talking about?" And like you were almost like I guess the point of the video was, my interpretation was that was something a group of girls would ask a guy on behalf of another girl. Maybe she had a crush on the guy or whatever. And here were these boys asking, and what a ridiculous thing for other boys to ask. Do you remember that video? Do you know? It was one of your very early videos.
I've referenced that video in the past, and
Okay.
I referenced it just recently. And again,
Oh, did you?
The reason
Okay.
why the reason why those guys act like that is because they were raised by single mothers.
Right,
And
okay.
Because they were raised by single mothers, they learn how to have relationships like a woman. And
Okay.
with women, they have to compete for the attention of men.
Right.
And these boys don't understand that. They don't understand that a man is not supposed to be focused on looking for the attention of girls like that. He's supposed
Right.
to be on his purpose. He's supposed to be focused on his
Right,
goals. And
okay.
I found it to be suspect because when I came to junior high school, I was looking to try to win awards. I was looking to try to get to the honor roll.
Right.
I'm looking to try to get things going, but you're running into these guys. And I always found it to be suspect because,
Right.
again, boys who are raised by fathers, they're like, look, I'm here to try to either go out here and do well in school as related to my grades. I'm looking to go out here and find out to beat the big video game. I'm looking out here to try to find comics are available. I'm not thinking about these girls. I'm focused on my purpose. And if the girls come along, yeah, I'll step to them. But my main focus is on my purpose. But when you have boys who are raised by single mothers, they don't really understand that.
Right.
They think that everything is about getting women when they don't understand you're supposed to be on your purpose. Because when you're on your purpose, this is going to attract women to you.
Right.
And a guy who acts that, again, I just found it to be suspect when I
Right.
was 12. And I find it still to be suspect.
Right.
Because if you're defining yourself by the women you're involved with, again, this is an effeminate male. This is a male who has no father to teach him that you're supposed to be on whatever goals you want to accomplish. And that's the big problem what I see with a lot of these boys. I saw it since I was 12 years old. And instinctively, I knew something was wrong with them. And that's why I made that video back then. And it's something I wanted to teach and talk on because I know a lot of young guys, they're dealing with this, especially if they're going to places like public schools, or they're dealing with a lot of guys who come from single mother households. You're dealing with guys who just don't understand that you're relating to women the same way a woman relates to to men. And the thing is that your whole thing is reversed, and you're looking to go out here and get a girl because your mom needs a man, but you don't understand that a man has to be focused on his goals and his purpose.
Yeah, see, Shawn, and the other thing I would add to that, I don't know if you would consider this interpretation, but there was another thing that I got out of it. I just thought it was funny that, and I guess I took a different meaning, was that I could see being in school, if a girl went up to a guy and said, "Do you have a girlfriend?" Like almost asking on behalf of another girl. I could see a girl being curious about it, but it's weird for a guy to be curious if another guy has a girlfriend. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, it's all, like you said, it's suspicious, like that they would ask something like that. So
Yeah.
I guess I just had kind of a different view of it, but I like that video a lot. But Shawn, this is my final question, and this is kind of going off in like a whole nother, you're talking about comic books and stuff like that. I want to ask you this, and please be honest with me. You don't have to say what you think I want to hear, and I know you are honest. I don't think you would do that anyway. But there's a lot of there are comic book fans in this audience. There's also a lot of Star Wars fans, and I'm one of them. And I would love to finish this up talking Star Wars with you for a minute because you've been very critical about the politics of like some of the newer movies. My question is, this, and we could talk about some of that, but I also want to know, before these newer movies came out, like you talked about Lando Calrissian being a pansexual. I almost can't even say that without laughing.
Wayne Brady just came out like that recently.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
right. So, Shawn, before these new movies, what was your relationship with that movie? Like, were you a fan of the movie? Like, did these new ones ruin it for you? Like, give me an assessment. Like, was there a point in time when you were a Star Wars fan? Just give me some history on that. Because I'm a little younger than you, Shawn. I'm 46. But the first time I was ever in a movie theater, I saw A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back like within months of each other's. Because if you remember, they would re-release old movies, especially in the case of a sequel. They were
I remember those days.
Right, they were running A New Hope to get people amped up for Empire Strikes Back. So I mean, I was really young, man. I was like 3 years old, barely 4 years old, and I saw both of those in the theater. So I grew up being a huge fan. I mean, of course, that movie had an impact on our age group. But give me some thoughts, like good and bad. Were you a fan? And then these newer movies, I know you've been critical. What's your view on that film franchise?
I grew up with the original trilogy, and my
Right.
brother took me to see all three of the original trilogy movies when they were first run.
Right.
And I absolutely love those movies. Those movies were a major part of my childhood, along with Transformers,
too.
Voltron, and G.I. Joe.
Yes.
So Star Wars is a major part of my childhood. I had VHS, but I had to leave them when I moved from one apartment to another. I bought the DVD box set of the original trilogy with the 97 special edition and the original movies.
Yep.
And that's a major part of my collection as related to my movies. And Star Wars was a major part of my childhood. It was a major part of growing up for me. I mean, that entire story is one that resonates with me, and it resonated with me
The hero's
for
journey.
years. I mean, all of the parts of the original trilogy, they are a major part of my childhood, my early childhood. And I was never a fan of the sequel trilogy, because the sequel trilogy basically destroys everything that the original trilogy was all about. I mean, the original Star Wars, for me, again, what really resonated with me wasn't just the special effects, it was the story about people, because the original Star Wars was about people coming together to take on this intergalactic threat. It was people from different walks of life, people from different cultures, people from different ways of life coming together for a common goal. And we got to know all these great people, but instead of looking to make a story about people, what Hollywood wanted to do was cash in. And that's one of the great tragedies of what happened with the sequel trilogy. People were so focused on trying to cash in and trying to promote their own agendas, they forgot what the original message of the original films were all about. I mean, the original Star Wars films, again, they were a part of my childhood growing up, your childhood growing up. I mean, there are other YouTubers like Retro Blasting. It's a major part of his life, and many of others that I talk to online, like Mad Black 80 and Mr. Superboy. I mean, it's a major part of our lives, Star Wars. And I really hate to see what they're doing with Star Wars right now, because it really runs counter to the message. And even worse than that is that it was a missed opportunity, as I see it, because I saw where the story was going. I mean, the prequel was about the old Republic. The episode 4, 5, and 6 was about the war with the Empire, and I was hoping to see them go in a direction where they were going to start talking about building into the new Republic with remnants of the Empire, looking to try to undermine the forming of this new Republic. I always thought that that was the direction they should have gone in. We should have seen Han Solo rising to become a political force. We should have seen Luke leading a new generation of Jedi. We should have seen Leia being, again, another political force as related to being having different political views than Han Solo. I mean, there were so many great opportunities for storytelling here with Star Wars, but sadly, instead of telling a story that would have flown organically into the episode 4, 5, and 6, and 1, 2, 3 to show us the characters in Star Wars coming full circle, what they did was go out here and focus on trying to make Rey, this avatar of Kathleen Kennedy, a super feminist, And that really messed up all of Star Wars as I saw it. Because again, I saw where they were going creatively with episode one, two, and three, and so showing us what was as related to the Republic, which led into the war. Episode four, five, and six showing us the Empire looking to go out here and continue in its conquest and oppression and the resistance that formed. And I thought seven, eight, nine should have been about the forming of the new Republic and the resistance as related to the remnants of the Empire, because yes, the Emperor was dead in Return of the Jedi, Darth Vader was dead, but there would still be people loyal to the Empire. And again, lots of great opportunities for stories, but the whole thing is because you had all of these people who wanted to push their politics and their social agendas, they wound up destroying a great opportunity to continue telling a great story and having that story resonate with a new generation of Star Wars fans.
Shawn, do you remember how Marvel Comics, because I was a huge fan of this as well, Marvel did, like, they had a Star Wars line of comics in the late 70s, early 80s. Do you remember that? Because I had a ton of those when I was a kid. I
had a friend who had a few of those.
Right. I was really into those. And what's funny is, people also, they've got strong opinions about the prequels. I thought that cosmetically, visually, the prequels looked like those comic books. If you remember, because a lot of those comic books, they were what was weird about it, Shawn, was that, do you remember, like, one of the things, like, with Return of the Jedi, when they went to Endor, you had seen, so far Star Wars had snow, they had desert planets, they had a cloud city, but they only had quick little excerpts of what would be a forest, say on like Yavin or something like that. Suddenly now they're in this entire planet where they're spending a considerable amount of time in a forest, which this was a new setting. I know I'm really nitpicking here and zeroing in on these weird little details, but I remember those comic books. One of the things they did was there was all these different landscapes that were not in the movies. Now, mind you, those comic books had already started coming out before Empire Strikes Back was even a movie. So before Return of the Jedi, the only time I had seen those different settings was in the comic books. Now, in the prequels, that was one of the things that caught my attention. Whether you liked them or not, I thought the different scenes and the different planets and the settings, it was very busy. A lot of action going on, quick cuts to different scenes, and it kind of reminded me of those comic books. You said you had a friend that had those. Did you ever own any of those, or do you remember looking at any of those, or was it something you had no experience with those comic books?
Well, all I knew was what my friend had as related to the covers. He was more into Star Wars comics than I was, but in a comic book or a novel, you can go and you can build a larger world. Yeah. But when you're dealing with a studio or movie studio, you have limits as related to your budget, because back then these movies didn't cost that much to make.
Right.
So the reason why they weren't able to get really expansive is because they didn't have the budget. But what's really sad about the sequel trilogy is that they had the budget, but they still didn't expand because they had a limited imagination.
Right.
But when you're working in a comic, you can really go out here and build a larger world. You can build a much bigger, richer world where you can go into forests, you can go into different scenarios, you can go into multiple scenarios and multiple storylines. I mean, that's what I've seen as related to writing. You can go out here and get into different worlds. So when I look at Star Wars, I look at not only the comics, but I look at the expanded universe. There are a lot of people who love the expanded universe because it allowed them to see a richer world. But you can build a richer world because, again, you're not constrained by budgets as related to a movie set. So that's why the worlds in the comics and the books were just that much bigger.
Oh, so Brian, before we wrap up, did you have any questions or anything? Oh, we're good? Cool. Shawn, any final thing you want to say to the audience? Again, anything, promoting anything or anything politically, a message for anybody, or where people can find your videos or stuff, like anything you want to say to wrap this up that we haven't covered yet?
All right. I'm just going to promote my most recent SJS Direct 2023 books, John Haynes' Godbreaker and John Haynes' 1987. Both of those books are currently available on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And you guys can check out my YouTube channel, Shawn James. It's spelled ShawnJames, and you can find all of my videos there. And if you guys want to drop a donation to help me continue to stay on the air, making videos and live streams that I do every Friday night at 11:15, you can send a donation to the Cash App or the PayPal or the Patreon.
Awesome. Well, Shawn, thank you so much. If you can just stay online, we're going to roll the music out and wrap this up. We just want to talk to you for a minute and say bye to you properly. But again, thanks to the audience for tuning in. Shawn, thank you so much for doing this. I think people can learn a lot from your videos, and I hope this was educational today because, like I said, we're living in that, I think, same kind of world that you are in New York with the politics and everything else. And I really hope this discussion is a tool for people to maybe consider other politics or other viewpoints, and they don't always have to kind of fall into those patterns and vote at the same time and take the abuse. So thank you very much, Shawn. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on today. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Awesome. We'll talk to you in a minute after this.
Now available on Lulu. John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at lulu.com today. Now available in paperback and e-readers. John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s in this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Get your copy of John Haynes 1987 in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.